Many people regard you as a personification of Ubuntu. What do you understand Ubuntu to be?
In the old days when we were young, a traveler through a country would stop at a village and he didn't have to ask for food or for water. Once he stops, the people give him food, entertain him. That is one aspect of Ubuntu, but it will have various aspects. Ubuntu does not mean that people should not enrich themselves. The question, therefore, is, are you going to do so in order to enable the community around you to be able to improve? These are the important things in life. And if one can do that, we have done something very important which will be appreciated.
From WBRN Radio in Boston and on the Boston Red Network, this is the Open Source Report. Yes, we finally have one out, and it's on the 16th of February, 2017. We've been a bit remiss here in terms of open source reports. Notice the last one was in August, but the open source community is thriving. We'll talk about some of the ins and outs of the movement, some of the Linux distributions, and where the kernel is at this point in time. Where Google is. Google has Android, which is an open source platform, a basically open source platform. There is a more open sourcey Android out there. The President DJ Trump has an Android. We assume he's probably running KitKat. We're not sure about that. But because of the open source nature of Android, and he possibly could be running a Marshmallow, which is 6 or the new 7. But they have been hardened, and depending on which brand, and that's part of the problem there, out there, or he has, how it has been hardened. But that kernel can be hardened, and it can be secured for the new crowned Twitter king. Took that away from Cory Booker, the former mayor of the urban center of Newark, and now a U.S. senator from Jersey. But nonetheless, open source moves on. Open source has a very important part to play in any administration, including the current administration. The government spends billions of dollars on software development, IT development. We've been trying over the 2 terms to prod the Obama administration into spending more money on open source software. Now, part of the problem there is, and it always happens in this manner, some of the open source vendors that are in government, particularly Red Hat, that has enormous amount of governmental business there, and what we're trying to do is get some of the smaller developers into government and government in general by promoting open source through not only the national government but state and local governments. And this is part of the problem, of course, and it is a cost problem, that many things in government could be moved away from the proprietary type of OSs, Windows in particular, the Office suites out there. Now, Google has done a very good job with universities in terms of Gmail and the Google suites. They can be used. A spreadsheet is a spreadsheet. I recall in the old days we sold spreadsheets out there. Lotus 123 came under the IBM umbrella, and for many, many years we sold Lotus products and the server that was with Lotus, can't think of it now, but anyway, it turned into that server. It was in a developmental process out there. I remember actually back to the first IBM HTTP server. Now Apache and IBM decided that they would incorporate Apache into their server, and Apache has survived. And of course, the Apache project, we've been trying to get them to change their name, but there are many, many things under the umbrella there. Let me move to the kernel. We have it up here. The latest, this is the stable kernel, is 4.9.10. Now, the release candidate out there is 4.10. That is the release candidate. You can get that at the kernel.org, your latest one there. Now, we're running Slackware, and I believe we have, see, what are we running now? 4.4.49, I believe, is what we are running at the present time on our Slackware implementation. A little different there. We upgraded on one of our notebooks to let's see. Well, actually, we upgraded to the 4.9.10 kernel. I believe that was a stable one at the time. They change from time to time who is a stable. We don't have the release candidate there, but we were trying to get some drivers for this notebook. It's an older notebook, so we wanted to get those. And you can upgrade that kernel by downloading it, or you can just simply patch it. In the old days, every few weeks or so, we would upgrade the kernel. Sometimes we would patch the kernel, but I recall when the kernel was on a floppy disk, and it went to a CD. So in other words, things changed along the road there. Let me just move over here a little bit. We've been saving up some things, and some things we have had to move on from. A little bit about gamers here and gamer cards. The AMD, and we've used AMD products here, and of course they have their video cards, the Radeon cards there for gamers. And the takeaway with various gamer platforms, Windows 10 is mentioned in here with Linux on 64-bit systems, and effectively they are a little bit slower now than they were at one time. Now this is from the Pharonics people. They tested a Radeon RX 480 here, and they used Windows 64, and let's see, the Radeon Prism is the software, and they also used Ubuntu. Now, Ubuntu, I tried Ubuntu, was it last year? I was taking an IT course, penetration course. Anyway, nonetheless, we tried it, and one of the problems with Ubuntu, and we started using Ubuntu when it first came out of Johannesburg, actually, and then they moved to the Netherlands. There, they were in Amsterdam, and now, of course, they're in London, but there were just bugs in it, so we had to abandon it and move back to Slackware. So for us, Slackware is a much better, and we'll get into a little bit in terms of some of the OSs out there that you can try, depending obviously on what you want to do. Some of these OSs we'll be talking about can be run from the proverbial stick or the DB. Now, they used an Intel 7th generation. It's called the i7 processor from Intel, and it got pretty good results on it. The Samsung, let's see, solid state 256 drive. We use a Samsung here, and let's see, DDR4 is what they're using, 3200. That is, 8 gigs of that, and what are they using? And the MSI main board. We don't use MSI, but we've gigabytes and various other ones out there. But things are changing, and let's see if I have. We went through this, and well, the Vulkan graphics boards are coming out here now. These are AMD boards, and they offer some interesting situations here. Now, there are two boards, two graphics cards, I should say, that are prominent, pretty prominent here. AMD announced why we started this off the Radeon XR 470 and XR 460 graphics there. This is from AMD, and then you have NVIDIA, two of them out there. But the NVIDIA and the new AMD Polaris GPU supports 4K and virtual reality through the Vulkan application, and that is one of the new things. And this is actually from a PC World here, that the Vulkan applications are going. It's kind of interesting in that at one time in Linux, we were able to run to get much faster speeds for gaming. At one time at Cranston here, we actually integrated gaming boxes for gamers. That is something we don't do anymore. But Alienware is still out there. Dell has bought it. The Stream machines, these are PCs with the latest Intel Skylake CPUs and NVIDIA, GTX 960 GPUs base there, and various catalogs going along here. Stream OS, according to the Alienware people, these very, very fast servers that they have developed. And one of the important things here is that dealing with a Linux box, your kernel has to be customized, and a lot of people are using OpenGL, which was introduced in 1991. So we obviously need to do some different things. And these are ports and how ports tend to work out. One of the big problems here, many of the card manufacturers, not that many out here today, but don't have Linux drivers, and the Linux drivers have to be written from ground up to be where we need to take them. So that in itself is one of the biggest problems we have out there. And just take a quick look at what they call relational databases. We're just looking at some of the standings here. Oracle, and of course MySQL is an open source database, and Oracle now has it under its tent of databases, and anyway, nonetheless, it's number 2. And Microsoft SQL is still in there, and MongoDB is there at number 4, and Postgres SQL is number 5, and old DB2, that's the IBM one, is at number 6. And I didn't know that. And I guess there's still people out there using Microsoft Access. I almost stumbled over it. And number 17 in this particular thing is Hive, and a number of others here that are out there. Cassandra is in there with what it has, and they all have the advantages and disadvantages. This is some of our friends at the open source, various open source projects. If you go to the Cranston Twitter feed, you'll find us twittering from these people are on our Cranston Facebook. A lot of very good technical information there. We probably have not done as good a job perhaps as we should in moving forward the Facebook page. But we plan to do a better job of that, and also at the Cranston.com website, where we'll start integrating some of this material here. Let me just this is well, we've had this around for a while, but anyway, this is Google's got a new self-driving car plan. Google has had a number of plans out there. It's called Alphabet, and a company called Waymo announced an event there in California, is putting the brakes on its most ambitious self-driving car program. One of the things that Google has done is Google has got into various schemes, and then the schemes kind of disappear, moving self-driving cars out from under the auspices of Google X, where the project lived for 8 years. It's a big shift there. It looks at the Waymo site, and you read the blog there. But Waymo is evidently, I guess, the next step in the little car here that Google is putting out there, and we'll see where Google goes with their car. But Google does have a car, and it also has software. But there's we were reading a number of upstarts that are in the software business, and of course you have people like Tesla that are actually manufacturing cars out there. So in other words, there are a lot of people out there in the self-driving car game. So it has all changed there, and you have GM and whatever, and you have the Ubers of the world. They have an ambitious program. The first fleet of self-driving cars were launched in, of all places, Pittsburgh. That was back in August. The competition sort of thickens there. So these self-driving cars, it's totally wrong. Anyway, a little self-driving car here. We'll try to get a photo of Google. This is from, what is it? Gizmo operation here. What they are up to with the Google self-driving car. And various machinations around the self-driving car, and where the self-driving car will actually end up. So let's move along here. Yeah, we'll start out with a scripting language here for the Internet of Things. We've talked in our reports about the about the Internet of Things and where it is going. And Linux.com here, we'll talk about some of these very high-level languages. They call them Python, PHP, JavaScript are commonly used according to it in desktop servers web development, and the powerfully built-in functionality lets you develop small, useful applications with little time and effort. That's from Paul Sokolowski. He is an Internet of Things engineer at Leonardo. Anyway, an embedded Linux conference is coming up here. Again, Sokolowski discussed the challenges using high-level language in embedded development. It compares different approaches here, and micro Python, JavaScript, etc. here. And again, the high-level languages, of course, have been around, part of computer science, information technology landscape for several decades. Perhaps the first was the Unix shell. We're all familiar with it. And then we went in a little bit of history here. Perl, if you remember Perl, in 1987. TCL in 1988. And Python came out in 1991. And Ruby came out in 1995, PHP also 1995, and JavaScript 1995 also. A little bit of a history of what we're doing. Sapolsky says the benefits stem from the functions described above, and sophisticated compilers inside, built-in availability of powerful data types like arbitrary size list, mapping sizable standard libraries, external module systems allowing users to access even larger third-party libraries. Very important with your libraries out there, and all of this is coupled with a general easy field lesson. Typing, no build time anyway. Some of the things going on here, Sapolsky again, the idea of why we can't enjoy all or at least the benefits when developing for embedded devices. We spent some time talking about embedded devices, the use of the hardware platform Pi. With let's see, what is it? Linux systems with 8 to 32 megabytes of RAM. We don't think about that. We think about more gigabytes these days. But another issue is interaction. Embedded devices usually don't have a display or keyboard. But fortunately, the answer is known for decades, thanks to Unix, using a terminal connection, a serial there. We can connect to these, and that's usually how they are done. What are specific challenges of using these languages for the Internet of Things? How do you address memory constraints, for example? Sokolowski, it's definitely true that the interpreter consumes scarce hardware resources. Planning projects, you don't have the extra time on your hand. The idea is to deliver productivity of high-level languages into the hands of the embedded engineers. So we're talking about very small amounts, 16 to 32 of RAM. In the olden days, it was not unusual to see that sort of thing going on here. The Python 3 language subset, Zepper, and let's see. JavaScript. Yeah. The Linux Foundation has come in there and with Zepper, some of the languages. There's several of these high-level languages out there to use. Legacy 8-bit micro old C is the only choice you can enjoy. Another limit, you want to get the most out of hardware, C assembler. For those that remember assembler, machine language, call it, very fast. I worked at a place once where we used that at the time to develop a game for Octari, of all things. Nonetheless, this conference is coming up on the 21st of February, the 23rd in Portland, Oregon again. 130 sessions out there. It's the Embedded Linux Conference. We'll talk about it in a different presentation here. Getting a little bit into some of these distributions we've been talking about here, and we'll go to a different screen, but nonetheless, the KX Studio, and anyone wanting to do cross-platform pro audio applications, a huge collection there. We'll place a link to this distribution. A lot of things are there, especially if you're doing audio. We do a lot of audio around here. Let me go to let's see. Some of these are OSs out there, primarily for security. One is called TENS. This is the 10th offering here, but anyway, it's a trusted in security node known as lightweight portable security. It used to be known as lightweight. There, 10. We'll have to do something here. A subgraphic OS is another one that's based on, excuse me, Damien. There's designed for ultra tight security. The kernel has been hardened with a number of security enhancements. You can do this through the customization of your kernel. Also, has created virtual sandboxes. Now, this is the thing of subgraphic around risky applications like browsers. Their specialized firewall, also routers, are all about going connections through anonymous through the Tor network. Each application has to be manually approved by you. The OS is designed to be installed on hard drives. Encryption of your files is mandatory, meaning there's no longer any writing of unencrypted data anywhere. So your data is all encrypted. All versions of a customizable firewall if you want to use that. Whonex is another one. Booting a live operating system is a nuisance. Well, Whonex is split into two parts. The gateway routes all connections again to Tor. The second workstation part reduces the chance of DNS leaks. It runs in a virtual machine. Whonex is compatible with all operating systems that can run a virtual box. And let me see if, well, another privacy OS here is IP Redaalo OS. It's part of Tails. It's a privacy one on Fedora. Can be run in a live mode, installed on the hard drive, just as Tails OS. We'll get to Tails in a minute here. Features anonymous email, BitTorrent client's ability to browse special domains with the extension .I2P. Unlike that .ITP does not act as a gateway to the normal internet, so IP reader cannot safely access regular websites. So that's a little different one here. One that we use, now this is penetrating testing here, Kali, named after a Hindu goddess. I don't know anything about that, but one of the oldest and most well-known pen testing distributions. They download it. The iOS is updated weekly, and it will also happily run on an ARM device like the Raspberry Pi. Has a reputation. It is so formidable that its creators offers training through on the website if you want to train how to use it. This is one we also recommend here. It's called Black Arch Linux, and it is another pen testing based on the Arch Linux. are relatively new. It contains 1,600 different hacking tools, saving you the trouble of having to download what you need each time. Black Arc, it can be run live from a USB stick or a DVD, CD, etc. installed on a computer or a virtual machine. It can even be installed on the Raspberry Pi to give you a portable pen testing. Recommend that, or on an old notebook. You can also do that. Now, this is Tails, has been around for a while. Tails is one of the systems, well-known privacy distribution, runs from a DVD and live mode. We've used it before there. The OS can also be used as a persistent mode when when your settings can be stored on an encrypted USB stick. We'd advise you to do that. Now, Cubes is a top privacy conscious distribution. Cubes OS uses the Zen hypervisor to run a number of virtual machines there. Zen Citrix has installed Zen there. Anyway, nonetheless, it is one of those out there that you can use. This is called the 10 best Linux distributions for privacy and security buffs in 2007. And we were just looking at that. We'll get some of the screenshots in here. The Cubix OS, QUBS OS, not for novice, but it's a graphic installer to your hard drive, and it's, of course, encrypted. Yeah, we went over the Xenix part there, virtual machines, and we covered. We did the Keck Studio. That is for recording. It's a sort of a feeble alternative, according to them, to Pro Tools, support for audio plugins, etc. Here, a lot of digital stuff is included in it. And we went through the scripting language, so we won't go back there again, these high-level scripting languages. So let me go away from this and back to where we were here. I don't know if we brought up, we got through the video cards. Somewhere here we had the Google, no firewalls, no problem. And this has been one of the trends. Now, this is coming out of the RSA conference, so we'll talk a little bit about it. Google has sent the tried castle of analog network security soft centers protected by a tough exterior out to pasture for good. Now, on Tuesday, Google shared the 7-year journey of its internal Beyond Corp rollout, where it affirms a trust based on what is known about users and devices connected to the network. This has been coming for a very, very long time. Director of Security there, Heather Atkins, said the company's security engineers had their eureka moment 7 years ago, envisioning a world without walls and daring to challenge the assumption that existing walls were working as advertised. Now, we're not talking about the wall of the Trump administration. These are firewalls. We acknowledge that we had to identify users because of their devices and had to move all authentication to the device. Now, this is something that you see more and more of. And part of the reason with mobile devices out there, this is why old DJ Trump's not in as much of a problem as you would think, because his device itself is being identified there based upon actually what it is. Google are probably quicker than most enterprises understood how mobile was going to change productivity and employee satisfaction. It also knew that connecting to corporate resources living behind a firewall via VPN wasn't a long-term solution. So this is going to have an impact on VPNs. The solution was to flip the problem on its head and treat every network as untrusted and grant access to services based on what was known about the user and their device. All access to services, Atkins said, must be authenticated and authorized on encrypted connections. This is where it differs there. Implementing Beyond Corp required a new architecture. This is from Roy Ward. He's the site reliability engineering manager at Google. The first step was to inventory users and their roles as their careers at Google progressed, essentially reinventorying job hierarchies, and assessing why they need access to internal services. The same intimacy was needed with respect to device information, requiring construction of similar inventory systems that tracked all devices connecting to services through the life cycle. With that in place, Ward said Google engineers went to work building a dynamic trust repository that ingested information from more than 24 data sources, feeding its information about what devices were going through the network. Of course, policies were set up. We won't read all this, but this trust definition there. The final part was a rollout. It was the implementation of a phase with the project had executive support. There was a caveat, don't break anything, and he evidently didn't break anything. 15 years of assertions about the privileged network. So, again, this was with the expensive first step was to deploy on privilege on a trusted network in every one of Google's approximately 200 different buildings. So 200 different buildings, but with thousands of workers. Our business objectives are compelling to executives, Atkins added. We went from local-based authentication and knowledge-based authentication that relies on quality data. Accurate data was a key to be able to make this thing work. So this will have an enormous effect on firewall vendors, how we look at security in the future. And we thought we would put this in because one of the things that we talk about. So in other words, what we're seeing is a complete evolution in what we do and how we look at it in the Linux world and in the world of open source projects, how we are moving along, especially there. Linux has always been, and this is one of the things to remember about Linux. Linux is both a desktop, a penetration testing tool environment, and at the same time it is a server, and you can make a server out of any Linux distribution, including Ubuntu. So in other words, it doesn't matter which one it is, you can do that, and you can use something like the Raspberry Pi or any other one, whichever one you want to use. Let me just I'll wind this down with what is open source software. This is from Linux.com. Open source software, most of us think of, we already know, but in fact there are a number of interpretations and nuances to defining open source, and this is the first article in a new series that explain the bases of open source through the discipline of professional open source managers. Excuse me. Defining open source in common terms is the first step for any organization using open source software, OSS. When we talk about OSS, all of their OSS, the open source phenomenon is actually a more precise definition. Open source software is distributed under a license that meets certain criteria. It's available. It is available in source code form without charge or without cost. Open source may be modified and redistributed without additional permission. Finally, other criteria may apply to use and redistribution. The official definition, the most widely accepted one, open source, comes from the Open Source Initiative. I list a number, the Free Software Foundation, whom we back, for the most part, prefers the term free software, and we move to free. If you notice on our Twitter feeds, we talk about being open source developers. We're actually developing free software. Is a much more simpler definition, but open source is compatible with and includes free software. Sometimes these terms are combined as FOSS, free and open software. Well, that everything tends to be evolutionary, and we move out of it. And now there are other kinds of downloadable software, shareware. We started out as a shareware distributor in 1988 here at Cranston. Anyway, not trial software. There's also other software that doesn't allow free redistribution as part of another anyway, won't even get into those characters. So we thought we would end with this, so you sort of understand what is going on out there. Shareware we don't hear as much about anymore, primarily because at the time we were selling things like word processing programs, graphic type programs that automated command line on the old DOS part of the system there, and on Unix systems, excuse me, / Linux systems, we had FreeX, and FreeX is still out there. It's not called FreeX anymore. The X system actually came in on the Unix system. I've always been a proponent of X. Now I know the command line fanboys and girls out there like the command line, and for some things, command line is preferred, but we still are in the point and click racket. Mouse fanboy, as they call it. But at the same time, they can both be used here. There has been an evolutionary process in the open source, a free software thing, and we go back to the Free Software Foundation in Boston, and how they have addressed these problems, and we're starting to see more applications out there like Libre software that is absolutely free. There's always been this schism or this conflict in the open source area between some of the proponents, libertarian types, right of center types. There's an interesting situation here at Cranston Software. We were founded as an open source vendor, but at the same time coming from the shareware thing into open source, and then of course came Linux, and at the same time we were selling hardware from various vendors, and we even sold Windows for people that wanted Windows at that time. We don't do that anymore, and we're integrators and resellers. We built systems. We started out selling floppy disks and hard drives for $300+ strange thing, and building systems, and that's really where we got into it, putting shareware in or on the systems, and then it became more or less a gimmick by some of the larger integrators, which are not around anymore. But you can't even think of who they were anymore. Dell is still around, but some of the others have disappeared. And the whole ecosystem of Windows was built on, with every Intel processor, there came Windows. So it was built on a rig, a crony capitalism type system, and that is still out there. But what has happened now, fortunately, people have went to the mobile devices, i.e. pretty much mobile smartphones. Then, of course, pads. Android is the king there. And then you have iOS, that is Apple. But that is pretty much how things are done. And, of course, you have in between notebooks. Well, notebooks are there. Desktops don't sell very well anymore. Not as very many desktop systems. And the cloud has really asserted the importance of mobile devices. Because you can have your mobile devices, you have Google Drive, Dropbox, whatever you want to have. You can build your own server very cheaply and have it at home and offload various materials to it. That can be done with Linux. And some of our broadcasters will talk about this. We were going to talk about Linux Mail, so we'll get to that differently, where we deal with actually how you can get your mail and put it on a Linux system, or you can use Fetch. We'll get into a little bit more of that. We'll also do some YouTube stuff where we actually can demonstrate to people where things are going in those terms. So that's some of the stuff we'll be doing here in some of our presentations that are coming up, where we'll actually get to talk about some of the innovations and what Google is doing. Google is also as interesting. They are moving, and we'll talk about this in a future broadcast, from the Android system to a different system. We'll keep up with Google because Google is a we'll call quasi open sourcey type. At one time, Google had all their hardware was commoditized hardware. Then they started building custom hardware. We talk about here also, and we have in the past, not only Raspberry Pi, which is incidentally open source, but other open source type hardware, a very good solution. One of the things I've been interested in is an open source meter for diabetics. Being a diabetic, we're interested in that. There have been some modifications to pumps that some diabetics use, and that is a very a good thing, no doubt about it. So engineers have been working on those items. So there's a lot of things going on out here in the open source movement, and what we envision doing here is bringing these broadcasts to you bi-monthly and perhaps even weekly, because things are changing so fast that we have to stay up with it. What has happened at WBRN, our radio station, is that enormous amount of our time had been consumed by the 2016 election because we do the analytics for the election. We were very successful in that, incidentally. And we also have a component here that we deal with our macroeconomics model, and that has been going very well. So those are two things we do, and that was basically in our 5-year programs, where we've integrated politics in, and then what was it? The late 1990s, we went to a radio, and we've been there ever since. And then in 2000 on to internet radio, and that is where we are. And that is a lot of the work that we do with a number of different outlets. And of course, you'll hear us here on. We've integrated via blog talk, via Stitcher, Speaker, and iHeartRadio, and some others, and more to come. And of course, our YouTube channels, we'll get those in. Right now, we're doing audio YouTube, but we'll come in with actual YouTube. At one time, we were doing these over on a live stream, but live stream is expensive now, in that you have to pay roughly $100 per month, and that is on a year basis to get a discount there with a live stream. So we go to YouTube, and a lot of people, there are hundreds of thousands of YouTube presentations. So we've been doing a lot in that particular space, because we understand that open source not only has to be developed, but it has to be propagandized around, and that is basically our function there. We try to get around to a few conferences. We used to do some Android developer conference, and doing this year. And part of the reason was Google was moving so fast that we came up with one presentation idea. It didn't work, and the people promoting one conference obviously didn't think we were working either. But that's neither here nor there. That's one of the reasons we went an independent route, but the independent route itself is a collective route. But we align with people like the Free Software Foundation and thousands of other developers out there. And if you go to our Twitter feed from Cranston Software, you'll find a lot of these people, very, very smart people there that have cutting edge ideas and these sources that we come upon. So we'll be improving things as we move along. Nonetheless, have a good week, everyone. This is MA at Cranston Software signing off. Good day.